E-content development. Course, Business Research Methods. Unit 1, Introduction to Business Research. Topic, Problem Formulation. Objectives. To know meaning of problem formulation. To understand the sources of problem. To explain the identification process. To describe the formulation of selected problem. To discuss the formulation process. Part I. Introduction. Research is a planned activity that must be planned beforehand. Planning means an idea as to how the research to be worked out. In other words, planning refers to deciding the issues or problems or question to be studied, framing objectives and determining the means to achieve it. Research is an intellectual process. It assumes curiosity, imagination, vision and having knowledge of research process. Proper planning directs the research work. To select a problem, the researcher has to have an idea of knowledge as to which issue, problem to be chosen. Selection of a problem is the first step in research. The term problem means a question to be examined. In research, selection of a problem or issue is itself a problem, and its identification is not an easy task. Having a vision and imaginative insight has its role to play in this process. To select a problem, the beginner can consult their teachers, friends, senior fellows to identify a problem, or otherwise if the researcher self has any ideas, then they can have discussion with the teachers for further steps. The researcher in the discussion can dig out related aspects of the study area, so that will lead to identification of the problem. The actual selection should be the choice of the candidate himself. For example, if the beginners would like to know the satisfaction level of customers of a particular bank, has to identify the variables described in the table. 2. Identify bank customer satisfaction. Public sector men on service, private sector women, communicatio and educated, illiterate, attention, or all the above. Later study area to be decided with the help of seniors, with significant others followed by place of conducting the research. Hence, the researcher has to have critical, curious and imaginative mind, so that practical problems can be easily identified. Part 2. Sources of problems. The researcher has various ways to identify sources of problems. 1. Habit of reading. When a researcher has a habit of reading books, critically analyze the knowledge from books and articles relating to the subject of interest, therefore certain question may arise in our mind that may lead to identification of problems. 2. Academic interaction. Classroom lecture, seminars, attending conference based on the theme, out-of-class discussion and exchange of ideas may ignite certain stimulating problems, may further lead to identification of problems. 3. Daily experience. Each individual experiences life with unique characteristics, persons, fellows. Being alert, sensitive and imaginative nature of researcher may enhance the way of putting the problem into researchable one. Hence, the researcher should develop an ability of imagination into investigation, so that formulation of problem is achievable. 4. Exposure to field situation. The researcher has to visit field, gain practical exposure, training, workshop would enable them to the study. 5. Discussion. Consulting field experts, seniors, other fellow researchers, business executives will contribute to the identification of research problem. 6. Research. Repetitive researching may suggest for further identification of the problem. Part 3. Identification process. The process of identification of problem has few steps. 1. Selection of the discipline. the researcher has to work on in his/her area of discipline or subject such as English, economics, commerce, management, technology, social work, etc. The selection of a discipline is easy, but one has to have clear-cut idea. 3. Specialization. Example marketing management, finance management or personal management etc. of their own choices among the particular discipline. 2. Specialization of a selected subject. Well, in this step the researcher has to select a particular aspect of the specialized subject. Example customer satisfaction, quality of life of bank employees, role of personal managers in industries as specific area of study. The beginners should develop interest in identifying specific area. 3. Multiple choice of topics in the broader area. The beginners of any research endeavors has to have two or more specific topics of a selected area so that the researcher can prioritize on the basis of its relevance towards particular field. Example bank, industries, hotel management, etc. 4. Researchability. The researcher has to make sure that is the problem researchable one. That leads to finding answers to the question through scientific manner. Although every problem in science involves a question or a series of questions, not every question qualifies as a scientific problem, Merton. In research, many questions specialization. Example marketing management, finance management or personal management etc. of their own choices among the particular discipline. 2. Specialization of a selected subject. Well, in this step the researcher has to select a particular aspect of the specialized subject. Example customer satisfaction, quality of life of bank employees, role of personal managers in industries as specific area of study. The beginners should develop interest in identifying specific area. 3. Multiple choice of topics in the broader area. The beginners of any research endeavors has to have two or more specific topics of a selected area so that the researcher can prioritize on the basis of its relevance towards particular field. Example bank, industries, hotel management etc. 4. Researchability. The researcher has to make sure that is the problem researchable one. That leads to finding answers to the question through scientific manner. Although every problem in science involves a question or a series of questions, not every question qualifies as a scientific problem, Merton. In research, many questions are unanswered. Therefore, a researchable question must be one which is framed through observation or through any other method can provide answer. 5. Facilities. To meet the requirements of research need certain facilities such as well-equipped library, relevant books, competent guidance, software technology, etc. 6. Usefulness and social relevance. The study should be socially relevant. Above all, the study should contribute to the concerned body of knowledge or solution to the practical problem. This is important from the point of view of high-level research and sponsored research. Part 4. Formulation of the selected problem. In the initial process of problem formulation, the researcher may find research as unclear, indefinite, and the solutions are unknown to the researcher. Therefore, the selected problem has to be defined and formulated, which is a difficult process. To have an understanding, the researcher has to study selected articles, learn reviewing, in order to understand the nature of the problem. Only through practice of reading with concentration the researcher can gather the actual meaning of the studies from articles, journals and books. For example, for commerce and management there are enough books are available, among them research methodology concepts and cases written by Deepak Chawla and Neena Sondhi, business research methods by Donald R. Cooper et al., business research methods by William G. Zikmundet al. are examples. The researcher must read such books to understand, to think and to reflect upon what is read and digest it. Further, the researcher has to discuss with the learned persons. This is one of the added advantages to the researcher to gain insight into the chosen problem, to define and formulate it. 4. Formulation of problem means translating and transforming the selected research problem topic into a scientifically researchable question. It is concerned with specifying exactly what the research problem is and why it is studied. The formulation should include both the what and the why aspects. Merton had identified three principal components in the progressive formulation of a problem for research. 1. The originating question. 2. The rationale. 3. The specifying questions, possible answers to the originating problems. 1. The originating question indicates what the problem is. It may call for discovering new and more decisive facts relating to subject matter of the study. For aid, if the researcher would like to know about product designing, corporate social responsibility, product manufacturing, satisfaction level of employees or customers, quality of life are broader areas in which the researcher may look into these areas and find out the researchable questions. 2. Rationale constitutes the statement of reasons why a particular question is posed, and answer to these questions will contribute to theory or practice. In other words, rationale is about finding a research gap or determining why the study has been chosen, reason behind it, and how you are going to fill the gap or justify the answer to a question as and undergoing a systematic way of research. 3. Specifying question. The broad area of topic of research may be divided into specific questions. Special attention to be given on construction of questions need to be simple, clear, empirically verifiable. They are specified as investigative questions. Part V. Formulation process. The formulation problem has different process. They are 1. Developing title. While developing title, care should be taken in framing it that depicts the meaning towards the study. Example, if the researcher wants to know the satisfaction of job among employees of a particular bank, then the title would be a study on the job satisfaction of bank employees, with special reference to public sector bank in Bangalore city is the title. The real intention of the study, i.e., job satisfaction of bank employees, followed by geographical area of the study, has to be mentioned as it is mandatory in research. 2. Review of literature. A literature review is a comprehensive compilation of the information obtained from published and unpublished sources of data resourced through journals, newspaper, magazines, publication by government departments, etc. Through review of literature, the researcher perceives different perspective and methodologies to be adopted to investigate the problem and 5. Identify possible variables to be investigated. The review of literature also leads the researcher to narrow the scope of the study, so that the research problem may be formulated with its significance and tested. Once the researcher is done with review of literature, he should develop logical theoretical framework on the basis of the reviews and should be able to provide the foundation for the problem statement. Research variables refers to identification of key variables for the research study. To carry out a research investigation, it is imperative to convert the concept and constructs to be studied into empirically testable and observable variables. In research, a question is known as variable, often variables dichotomous in nature. Example: educated, illiterate, or men, women, yes, no. Variables can be further classified as a dependent variable. Dependent variable is considered as important variable to be studied in research work. The entire research process is involved in either describing it or investigating the probable causes of the observed effect. For example, if a researcher would like to study the comparison between excessive mobile phone usage and its impact on sleep among college students, maybe this is one of the reasons why students come to class late. Students tend to sleep late night playing online games. Here one should note that one of the factors identified is excessive mobile phone usage, which in turn affects sleep as well as daily activities such as eating habits, physical activities, which in turn affects eyesight. B. Independent variables. The variable that influence or impact the dependent variables is referred to as an independent variable. Here the task of research is to bring out the causality of the relationship between the independent and the dependent variables. For example, independent variables, dependent variables, age, education, sleep disturbances, gender, excessive mobile phone usage. Effects on eating habits. 3. Building a conceptual model. On the basis of theoretical knowledge, nature of the phenomena, properties, its elements and their interrelations should be identified and structures into a framework. This conceptual model gives an idea of the research problem, shows its various properties and variable to be studied. The formulation leads to framing of objectives followed by hypotheses to be tested. In order to work out a conceptual model, one should carefully and critically study the available literature on the subject matter. Without academic 6. Background knowledge, it would be difficult to grasp and comprehend the nature of the research problems. 4. Defining the objectives of the study. The objectives are framed on the basis of the variables that are answered through the study. This indicates what the researcher is trying to bring out from the study. The researcher has to derive objectives from the conceptual model. They state the elements in the conceptual model: levels, kinds of cases, properties, and connections among properties are to be investigated. But it is the conceptual model that defines, describes, and states the assumptions underlying these elements. Matilda, 1963. Generally formulated objectives aims at description or explanation or even analysis of causal relationship between the variables that indicate the expected results or outcome of the study. However, the objectives may be depicted in the form of either statements or questions. Illustration: occupational safety and health are important aspects in industries. Safety, in simple terms, is freedom from the occurrence or risk of injury or loss of life, whereas health at workplace and healthy work environment are amongst the most valuable assets of individual as well as to an organization. Now we will frame objectives on the basis of occupational safety and health of employees of a particular industry. 1. The title of the research problem is Perception on Occupational Health and Safety Measures with special reference to X industry, Bangalore. 2. Objectives of the study, in a statement form I, to know the socio-demographic details of the employees. 2. To study the existence of awareness level of health and safety measures among the employees. 3. To ascertain the utilization of health and safety measures among the employees. 4. To recommend measures to improve health and safety working environment at the workplace. Here the foremost objective is to know on sociodemographic details, which is important for a researcher as they act as major independent variables. Therefore, no researcher would neglect these items that to be included in the study, followed by availability and utilization of health and safety measures by the employees constitutes the major variables for the study. The last objective must be ended with suggestions for the questions or the problem that are identified. The success of research will provide answers to these questions. 5. Setting investigative questions. After formulating research question, the researcher moves to the next level, i.e., investigative questions followed by sub. 7. Questions are set up for each major objectives. These would guide the researcher to develop concepts, operational definitions, and measurement devices. There may be sub-level questions each to be carefully formulated specifically. For example, in the previous title, the first objective was to know socio-demographic details. The questions are framed as age below 25 years, 25-35 years, 35-45 years, 45 and above. Education illiterate, schooling, PUC, UG, PG. Occupation, designation underscore 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 underscore. Marital status, married, unmarried, divorcee, any other supervised, any other underscore 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 below 1 year, years, 5-7 years, 7-9 years and 10 and above are few of the questions constitutes for the first objective. These questions vary from setting to setting. Second objective is to know the awareness level of health aspects. The questions to be framed in a questionnaire schedule are A. Are you aware of availability of primary health center in the premises 1? Yes to dot no B. Are you aware of availability of first aid in the premises 1? Yes to dot no C. Are you aware of impact of industrial effluents on health 1? Yes to dot no. On safety measures, I. Are you aware of availability of fire extinguishing facility at workplace? 1. Yes to. No to. Are you aware of training to be given on safety measures? 1. Yes to. No 3. Are you aware of safety officer must be available in the industry 1? Yes to. No. The third objective is on utilization of health services in the industry A. Have you availed treatment at PHC in the premises? 1. Yes to. No B. If yes, the reasons 1. Illness 2. Pain 3. Accident 4. Any other underscore 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 C. Is the services in the primary health center is free of cost? 1. Yes to. No D. Do you think there must be regular health checkup has to be conducted? 1. Yes to. No. 8. 6. Formulation of hypothesis. Hypotheses are temporary generalization or tentative propositions relating to investigative questions. The researcher may formulate according to the needs of the study to be tested in the research. These hypotheses would generally describe the properties of variables or show the relationships between them. The hypotheses aim at answering the research questions. 7. The operational definition of concepts. The subsequent step in the formulation process is to define operationally the concepts involved in the title, objectives, hypothesis. Scales indices are constructed for measuring abstract concepts. 8. Delimiting the scope of the study. A beginner has to delimit the scope of the study. The researcher is tempted to cover wide scope without knowing its complexities. For example, the previous study on health and safety measures at workplace. Under the topic, the researcher may widen the scope of industries by dividing from North and South India wise, or the number of industries may large in size. Covering 1,000 employees in Karnataka may require a large staff of field investigators and so on. Therefore, a researcher should take a close view of the implications and dimensions of the selected problem and keep the scope of its study within manageable limits, amount of the time, and other sources available. The purpose of this delimitation is to avoid confusion, superficiality, and promote clarification and successful completion within time limits and available resources. To sum up, formulation of research problem is first step in research work. The researcher has to go through review of literature and related research books, and meeting with experts, teachers and friends are helpful in formulating a research problem. Along with the interest and in-depth knowledge towards the research work, one can find a way to formulate problem. While reviewing relevant literature, the researcher has to read out whole literature to understand the process of taking up research work, to learn the methodology adopted, so that along with problem formulation, whole research process can be learned.